Ram. Good morning to one and all. So today let's start off our session. So I just request you all to again mute yourselves and also keep the question answers to the end of the session, and also to ask questions that are relevant to today's presentation. So today we'll be dealing with Ritucharya, that is seasonal regimens. So just to brief about last class, we had gone through with Dinacharya, that is the daily regimens that a healthy person has to follow, which includes waking up in Brahme Muhurtam, doing some exercise, Abhyangam, Dantadhavanam, Abhyangam, that is using of oil, and also exercise and importance of snanam or benefits of bathing. So in this session, we will look into Ritucharya, that is what are the seasonal variations or seasonal modifications we have to make according to the seasons that we go through. So roughly our acharyas have divided our seasons into 6 based on the topography or the land or what they experienced. So most commonly, I think these are the 6 seasons that we also go through. There are exceptions in a few countries where they go through only 4 of these seasons. But in most places, we can divide it roughly into 6. So let us start with Hemanta Ritu, that is considered early winter. This is only a very rough division of the months that we follow. So early winter starts from mid-November to Jan. I'm going from the last one. Hemanta Ritu is written last if people are following. So Hemantam is early winter. Then we move on to extreme winter, which starts in mid-Jan to mid-March, which is called Shishira Ritu. Then from winters, we move to spring, which is called Vasantham, which starts from March to mid-May. And after spring, we enter summer, that is Grishma Ritu, which is in mid-May to mid-July. That is the Agni Nakshatram period. And after summer, we move into Varsha Ritu, that is the rainy season, which is from mid-July to September. And after the rains, we enter into autumn, which is Sharath Ritu. So this is only a rough division of the 6 seasons. And in some countries or in some places, their winters may extend even up to 6 to 8 months. And the rest of the other 3 seasons may be divided. So which topography or which country you are in, accordingly, that Ritucharya can be followed. But this is by and large seen in most of the places, which is why and mentioned in our texts. So we'll go through this for today. So just like how in the first class, we saw about variation of Vayu, Pittam, Kapham through the day, through the night, in according to age. Similarly, the doshas have a effect on how they act in different seasons. So this is a brief chart of it. So let me explain the terms first. So Sanchayam, that is the one on top, is when in certain seasons there is a mild accumulation of certain doshas by nature. So there is a mild accumulation of certain doshas by nature in the body in its own sthanam. So wherever Kapham lodges, there will be a mild increase, and Pittam, Vayu respectively. Prakopam is an abnormal increase. So Sanchayam is where there is a mild accumulation of the dosha. Prakopam is when it abnormally kind of increases and moves into the wrong channels, and if not addressed to in those particular seasons, will definitely cause a vyadi or some kind of disease. Then the third one is prasara. By the end of the next season, that aggravated or accumulated dosha automatically subsides by itself. So this is a natural phenomena that happens in regards to dosha and season. So let us just see in which seasons which dosha undergo prakopam, that is excessive increase. You need not by heart or know the entire chart, but you should just, when we understand and go through each season in the next slides, you'll understand the principle behind why there is an increase, so it will be easy to remember. So in Vasanta Ritu or spring, there is an abnormal increase of Kapha dosham. And then In Grishma, that is summer, the vata that mildly starts accumulating ends up getting prakopa or abnormally increased in the rainy season. So in Varsha Ritu, you can see there is an increase of or a prakopam of vata, and the mild pittam that starts to accumulate in the body in the rainy season, that is the Varsha Ritu, undergoes abnormal increase in Sharath or autumn season. So if you remember these 3 points, it is enough. That is, Kapham gets aggravated or vitiated in Vasantham, that is spring. Vata gets vitiated or aggravated in the rainy season, and Pittam gets abnormally increased or aggravated in Sharath. So in these 3 seasons, if these 3 are not maintained or managed, definitely they lead to diseases because of one of these doshas, which is why our acharyas recommend slight modifications in the diet and regimens that we follow. So let us go through the seasons. Yeah. So the first 3 seasons, that is Shishiram, extreme winter, Grishma, Vasantham, spring, and Grishmam, that is summer, are included under what is called Uttarayanam. So Uttarayanam is when the sun moves above the northern equator, that is, the sun moves in the northern direction. So what happens is, as these 3 seasons progress, the Ushnam, that is the heat, the Tikshnam, the increased potency, and the Ruksham, that is the dry guna of the sun and air, causes decrease in human strength and vitality. So compared to the extreme winter, when we move to spring, there is a mild increase in the heat, or the intensity of the sun rays increases, and it becomes most powerful in Grishma Ritu. So slowly there is a power of the sun goes on increasing. So in these 3 seasons, gradually we see that the Ushnam, Tikshnam, and Ruksha Gunam of the sun and air in the environment increases, causing decrease in human strength and vitality. So as we move from one season to the other, our strength naturally decreases. So by the time we enter into Grishmam or summer, the human strength is very, very low, and there is a decrease in the moisture content in the air, which makes it very, very dry. So these 3 seasons collectively are called Adana Kala, that is period of extraction, where there is a slow extraction of the human strength. So slowly our human strength by default goes on decreasing. Then Dakshinayanam is when it includes the latter 3 seasons, which includes rainy, autumn, and the early winter, where the sun begins to travel south of the equator, where slowly the property of the sun begins to weaken. So again, from Grishmam, where the sun is at its peak, then in rainy, autumn, and winter, slowly the sun weakens, and the Saumya Bhavam, that is the cooling or the moon, the properties or the balam of the moon gains strength, and the body regains its lost strength and vitality slowly as we go through Varsha, Sharath, and by the time we reach Hemantam, our balam again becomes good or gradually increases. So these 3 seasons are called Visarga Kala, that is nothing but period of discharge, where it is believed that the sun or the sun lets out strength to the organisms or the humans surrounding it. So there is a discharge of energy or balam that is regained by us. So the first 3 seasons are Uttarayanam, where gradually our strength decreases, and in Dakshina Kalam, our strength gradually goes on increasing, and it includes the latter 3 seasons. So this is a rough picture of that. So where in Uttarayanam, we begin here, which includes the early winter, extreme winter, then we move into Vasanta Kalam, then up to Grishma Ritu, where we slowly, the power of the sun increases. Then from Dakshinayanam, that is after summer, we enter into rainy season, autumn, and again, when we enter into early winter, the power of the sun reduces, and then the humans gain balam or strength. So this is a rough chart of the strength. So this includes not only physical strength of the person, but also even Agni Balam of the person. So I think we would have all even experienced. So as I told you, from Uttarayanam, Dakshinayanam, maximum. From the winters, our Balam goes on reducing. So it is maximum in Shishiram and Hemantam. That is the last 2 seasons. It is maximum. That is extreme winter and early winters. Our strength in the body is maximum, and even our Agni or digestive power is very, very good in these 2 seasons. Gradually decreases in Vasantham, that is spring, but there is still some amount of balam. And again in autumn, we regain moderate amount of strength. So Grishma and Varsha are the 2 seasons we have to be most careful about. That is summer and the rainy season that follows it is where the balam is least or minimum in people. So if you recollect in Dinacharya chapter, we would have gone through that the vyayamam part we have to do in moderation in winters and Vasanta Ritu, and even lesser in Grishma Ritu. That is because of the capacity or the strength of ours that decreases according to season. So we have to tone out all our activities and food accordingly. So if you remember that in Grishma and Varsha Ritu, our balam, that is even our Agni, that is our digestive power, and even our physical capacity is minimum in Grishma, summer and Varsha, and it is maximum or very, very good in the winter seasons. So let us move on to each Ritu, or let's look into the regimens that our acharyas have mentioned in each season. So let us start again with early winter, that is Hemanta Ritu. So what is the principle that happens is, because of the cold atmosphere outside, because of the chill atmosphere outside, there is blockage to dissipation of the body heat that builds up inside. So either to maintain our body temperature or to balance the chillness outside, there is an increase of Ushna Gunam in the body inside, and because of the frigid atmosphere or cold atmosphere outside, the heat does not get dissipated. So this in turn is retained in the body, which is why it increases the digestive power. So especially in very, very strong men, there is a good or good increase of appetite. Even otherwise, in generally in human beings, in the winters is when we feel good amount of hunger. That is because of the blockage of the dissipated heat, and all of it is accumulated inside. So when there is a good digestive power and we feel hungry, we have to consume good amount of food. Does not mean lots. It means good amount of food to keep the Agni functioning properly. So if we don't consume good amount of food, what happens is the body begins to digest or break down our fats and all the other stored strength that we have. So when the Agni Balam is good in winters, we consume or are advised to consume good amount of food, and predominantly consume food that are Maduram, that is sweet, Amlam, that is salty, sour, and Lavanam, that is salty in taste. So we will see why. So the regimens are, the nights are longer in winters. So soon after waking up, one has a tendency to feel hungry. Then one should attend to daily regimens. Yeah. So what happens is the nights are longer, so one feels hungry on waking up. So we attend to our daily regimens, that is the Dinacharya, that is brushing and doing some exercise, doing Abhyangam, and then have some food immediately. Then in these seasons, Abhyangam, that is oil, application of oil, Murdha Tailam, that is oil application to the head, and massage to the feet are recommended. Because as we know, in winters, the skin becomes extremely dry, or there is extreme dryness in the weather. So to combat this dryness, we advise Abhyangam or application of oil in the body, and good amount of exercise is recommended. That is, the acharyas give an example of Niyuddha, that is fighting with experienced wrestlers, is an example to quote the intensity of physical exercise that can be done in these seasons. That is, good amount of strenuous exercise can also be taken up by the body in these kind of seasons. Then after applying oil, one should bathe with powders of Kashaya Rasa, that is slightly astringent powder, that is just to remove the oil and keep the dryness under control. And even Kashaya Rasam is also extremely good for the skin. Then they're advised in winters to stay in warm, closed spaces and use warm water for all purposes. Then keep oneself wrapped and warm in woolen clothes. So the clothing and the kind of dress we wear is also mentioned. So we should always stay in close, warm spaces, avoid unnecessary exposure to the cold wind and breeze that is around us, and judicious exposure to the sun. Swedanam is any kind of sudation or fermentation that we can expose ourselves to. So simple bathing in hot water is also a swedanam. So generally in winters or in cold seasons, always warm water is recommended for bathing, and one should wear shoes or feet should always be covered. Then coming to the type of food that they have mentioned to eat. So since the Agni or the digestive power is very, very good, so good or Guru Aharam, heavy to digest food, can be taken by the body or should be taken in these seasons. So Acharyas mentioned rice, wheat. So black gram, that is nothing but urad dal, is actually heavy to digest. So preparations made of urad dal, sugarcane juice, milk and milk products, sesame oil. So all these are actually guru to digest. So it includes milk, curd, ghee, butter, everything. Sugarcane juice is also quite heavy to digest. So in winters, these kind of food are very, very beneficial. Mamsa rasa, that is nothing but meat soup topped with a lot of ghee, or meat of healthy animals are recommended. So in some countries, maybe not in India, there are some countries where the temperature goes even up to 0 or in the negatives. So in extreme cold weathers, some amount of Guru Ushna Aharam is needed for the body to combat the increased fire. So in those countries or those places, in winters, some good amount of healthy meat has to be taken. Then beverages made of molasses. Molasses is nothing but a product that is got by refining sugar. So it's used in a lot of beverages these days. So it is very, very guru or heavy to digest. It is not usually recommended in other seasons, but in winters, Acharya mentioned to some amount these molasses can be taken. So in India, what we commonly see is we commonly have a lot of rotis or parathas, or we have lassi, we have sweet lassi, we have curd intake, and we have a lot of laddus or these wheat laddus that are made. So especially if you go through in the north, etc., there is parathas with a lot of butter taken with curd or had lassi with is very, very common, because all these are guru aharam, and it keeps the Agni satisfied or filled, and such these kind of food are meant to be taken in the winter seasons. So that is nothing but guru. I will go back to rice, wheat, then urad dal, sugar cane. So basically anything that is heavy to digest can be taken in winters, because the Agni is so good that we can digest heavy food. Then we move to Shishira Ritu, that is extreme winter, where the intensity of cold further increases compared to Hemanta Ritu. So the Ruksha and dryness guna only further increase in extreme winters. So Acharyas mentioned whatever Ritucharya or whatever regimens we follow in Hemanta Ritu, the same thing has to be continued for the next 2 seasons, that is in Shishira Ritu itself. So keep oneself warm, attend to daily regimens and have some food, doing of abhyangam, and also consuming of Guru Aharam or predominant of sweet taste is recommended, and keeping oneself warm. So in these 4 months, that is early winter and extreme winter, this is the rough charya that we are given to follow. Then coming to Vasanta Ritu. So after 4 months of winter, that is early winter and extreme winter or chillness, we enter into spring. So almost with 4 months of no sunlight and very, very minimum exposure or effect of the sun, in Vasantham or spring, what happens? The brightness or the sun comes out in good force. So the kapham that increases and accumulates in Shishira Ritu is liquefied by the hot sun rays. So because of the extreme temperature outside, and we in the 4 months consume good amount of guru or heavy food to digest, what happens is there is an inbuilt building of kapham that happens in the body. And then when there is a sudden exposure of sun rays that happens, whatever kapham that remains solidified in the body. So it's a simple example. Even if we keep an ice cube or anything that is solid outside and expose it to heat, it melts. So similarly, the solidified thick kapham that is accumulated in the body on sudden exposure or sudden change in weather outside, undergoes prakopam. That is, it undergoes further vitiation, and it spreads to all the channels, which is what principally happens in Vasanta Ritu. And it what happens is, this abnormal increase of kapham suddenly tends to weaken the agni. Last 4 months we would have had good food, good agni, whatever we eat digest, but suddenly when we move to Vasanta Ritu, there is a slight dullness in agni, and this tends to cause diseases. So by all means, the aggravated kapham has to be pacified. So if you generally notice, people commonly come up with terms like pollen allergy, dust allergy, hay allergy, or different kind of respiratory conditions always tend to increase when they move to spring. So usually people say in spring we get this. It is not because of spring, or it's not because of the pollen. It is because of the abnormal increase of the built-in kapham. And in spite of that, if we continue to do the same regimen that we are following in Hemanta or Vasanta Ritu, the kapham that is aggravated is not pacified. So what happens is, we are further going on aggravating the kapham that is already there. And also, if you see people who are prone to having wheezing or respiratory disorders, generally in Vasanta Ritu, it bothers them the most, because there is a, by nature, there is an abnormal increase of kapham that happens. So all this has to be catered to in Vasanta Ritu. So if you see clinically also, maximum number of respiratory conditions or patients come in spring season with an aggravated phlegm or chest condition. So by all means, the aggravated kapham that suddenly gets built up in Vasanta Ritu has to be pacified. So how it has to be pacified is, in a healthy person or medically, the aggravated kapham is pacified by doing vamanam, which I told you is one of the panchakarmas, which is an induced vomiting procedure to expel out the excess kapham. So this is the most common panchakarma done in Vasanta Ritu. Even people who are generally well can do a routine vamanam with any Ayurvedic physician who want to keep their aggravated kapham under control. And nasyam, like I told you, I mean, anutailam nasyam every day can be done. Or if the condition demands, if you end up into a very disease kind of condition, then the doctors or physicians may even do a shodhanam kind of nasyam for you. So medically, or even if you are well, Vasanta Ritu is indicated, or Vamanam is recommended in this season. Then the person by nature has to do good amount of vyayamam or exercise to keep the kapham under control. Then foot massages, udvartanam, that is nothing but using of medicated powders in the upward direction. This again is done in a lot of Ayurvedic centers, where abhyangam is using of medicated oil, whereas udvartanam is a more of drying and depleting treatment, where if you come with an increased kapham condition, they do udvartanam, or using of medicated powders and applying it all over the body. Then after bath, they recommend application of paste of chandanam, agar, or camphor. So what happens is, there's a misconception that suddenly after winter, when we enter into spring, because of the sudden power of the sun, or due to sudden heat of the sun, people think it is also, if we have entered summer. So what they do, people cannot bear the heat, so they end up doing all regimens that we have to do in summer, that is keeping the body cool, drinking a lot of cold things, drinking a lot of cold water, or doing all that. So which in turn, what it does is, it further vitiates the kapham again. So always after winter, we enter into spring, where there is a high tendency of kapham to get aggravated. So, and also there is some ushnatvam or heat that is generated. So application of chandanam, agar externally on the skin, or that is basically to keep the body slightly cooled off because of the external heat also that we come across. But we should always remember that just because it is hot, we should not be doing the regimens that are cooling to the body, which will further vitiate the kapham. There should always be a balance maintained in Vasanta Ritu. Then spend time in the afternoons reading or listening to stories. So sleeping during the daytime is contraindicated in Vasanta Ritu, because already there is an increase of kapham, and when we sleep during the daytime, kapham tends to aggravate or build in the body more. So that's why they have given us that the daytime should one should not sleep in the afternoons, and by evening spend time amidst flowers or gardens. That is just to expose ourselves or spend some time in the evening. So how we have to change our aharam is given. So in winters, like I told you, good heavy to digest food, sweet foods, sour foods are all recommended. Then when we move to spring, that is Vasanta Ritu, slightly change your diet to a ruksham, that is not a very nourishing or very unctuous diet, and have food that is easy to digest. So in winters, even guru or heavy to digest food can be consumed. But once we move to Vasanta Ritu or spring, we cannot go about consuming the same sugarcane juice, lassi, all those kind of juices, because it will further vitiate the kapha dosham. So we have to move to slightly lagu or easy to digest food. So what are the recommendations? Old yava, barley, that is yava, that is commonly known as jau, Jau. So I think a lot of people make jau rotis or yava rotis, and millets can also be used in Vasanta Ritu, because millets are a little drying and ruksha gunam, and they're easy, light to digest. So yava, millets can be included in the diet. Then wheat, then meat of Jangala Desha. So in winters, we saw that any amount of good meat is recommended, but in Vasanta Ritu, we cannot go on consuming the same amount, or we cannot consume meat, seafood or Anupadesha Mamsam. If you remember from the first, that is heavy meat or seafood meat is not recommended, as it vitiates kapham. So meat of Jangala, that is an light meat, or preferably meat soup is recommended. Then meat or vegetables which are roasted can be consumed in this season. I think there's this whole concept of barbecue, though it's a very new concept. Earlier days also, it was recommended that roasting vegetables or meat makes the quality of it more ruksham or drying. So having such kind of food in Vasanta Ritu helps for that Ritu, because anyway there is an increase of kapham, so we have to have everything that keeps the kapham under check. And honey is recommended in this season. So water boiled with shunti or mustam is recommended. That is, shunti is nothing but ginger. So that is again because shunti is again, ginger is again heating or good digestive. So it helps to keep the Agni under control, and the Ushna Gunam of it helps to pacify the tendency of increasing kapham. Then honey mixed with normal temperature water. So continuously something should be had to make sure kapham does not increase. So honey is actually kapha haram, it reduces kapham, and there are a lot of properties that or do's and don'ts on consuming honey, which we will see in the next class. But honey has to be had only with room temperature water. So acharyas mentioned, for those who are not habituated to having alcohol or fermented drinks, honey mixed with water is a good way to reduce kapham in the body. Asava arishtams. So these are very common medicinal preparations that are seen in Ayurvedic this thing. It is nothing but fermented preparations. So commonly physicians or people who come with complaints in these seasons are treated with asava arishtam, because they are ushnam. They help in increasing the digestive power and also reduce kapham. So if you see in summers or in extreme hot conditions, doctors will not recommend you to have asava or arishtam, because they further heat or give you a lot of burning sensation. But it is extremely good to have some asava arishtam to keep a good digestive system going in Vasanta Ritu. And drinks made of sugarcane, grapes or honey, again fermented, should be had to help balance kapham. So the contraindications of in Vasanta Ritu would be excessive take of sweet foods, then excessive sour foods, then heavy to digest food like dadi, that is curd, anupamamsam is heavy meat, urad dal, and food that is extremely cooling or very unctuous. So people go through this misconception once we enter spring, that it is so hot and we need to cool the body. It has become summer. So what they do is they go on consuming cold food, or they still continue to take juices, milkshakes, lassis, or whatever that is possible to subside the thirst. But excess of madhura rasa will further increase or vitiate the kapham. So it has to be a balanced diet. So always have some water boiled with a little ginger or dhania. Mix your grains by having some millets, yava, and if people consume meat, light meat or preferably meat soup, and also easy to digest food have to be consumed. You cannot be consuming the same paratas, rotis, butter. So 365 days we cannot have the same kind of diet. So this is the mild change that you make in Vasanta Ritu. So these are the few pictures. So wheat, ginger, honey, asavarishta or any fermented drink is recommended, and roasted meat or vegetables. Then we move to summer. So 2 months of Vasanta Ritu, there is a mild scare of kapham to be increased. But if we follow these regimens accordingly, we will prevent ourselves definitely from getting any kind of kapha vyadhi. But in spite of that, if people, as I told you, are predisposed to any kind of respiratory illness or have some aggravated kapha symptoms, then definitely vamanam or a nasyam that can be done with a physician will help. Then when we move to Grishma Ritu, what happens is, so what happens is the sun rays becomes more powerful. So in Vasantham, the sun has just appeared. By the time we reach peak summer, the sun becomes more powerful. The body feels squeezed with increased temperature. So the energy and the whole moisture content of the body goes on draining because of the extreme heat, and it weakens the kapham day by day. So ultimately, by the time we reach summer, the kapham is completely depleted, and because of the extreme ushnam, that is the heat and dry gunam, there is a mild increase of vatam that begins to happen in the body. So in this Ritu, what happens? There is slightly an increase of Vayu. There is zero kapham, and the body is extremely drained out because of the intense heat. So bathe in cool, refreshing water, and nights are always shorter. So what happens is one can sleep for a while at noon. So in spring, day sleep was contraindicated, but the only season in which day sleep is indicated is Grishma Ritu, because by default the nights are shorter than the days. Then cool, comfortable, loose clothing have to be worn, and apply a paste of chandanam. Then again, back then these were all methods to keep the body cool. So at night it's recommended to sleep in an open terrace, so which means you have to sleep in a cool place, and wearing chains or necklaces of cool pearls or sandal beads, so chandanam or mukta, because they were all considered very sheetam in nature. So it was basically all these were recommended. That is inferred that we have to keep our body cool, stay in cool ventilated places, and wear loose comfortable clothing. So what are the food that we have to go through is the diet. So again, to recollect, the Agni Balam and the human Balam becomes extremely weak and is minimum in Grishmam, that is summer, and Varsha, that is rainy season. So when there is no Agni Balam at all, that is the digestive power is very, very poor, we have to modify. So even by nature, if you observe, in summers, we don't feel that hungry. We mostly prefer to keep drinking something rather than eating food. Our appetite by nature will reduce in summers. So that's nothing abnormal. It is because of the phenomenon that we go through in nature. So predominantly, acharyas say have food that is in liquid form, and more which is maduram. So have food that is sweet, that is lagu, easy to digest. So maduram then again replenishes the body, prevents us from getting dehydrated, and also because the Agni Balam is weak, we have lagu ahar. And then saktu, that is nothing but paddy, that is parched rice powder mixed with water and sugar. So in these days, you can also consider having plain rice kanji. So rice kanji is very, very easy to digest. So that is recommended. Rice with jangala mamsa rasam, that is mild meat soup with rice, or even in our cuisine, or if in our foods, if you see, mostly people tend to have a lot of watery rasam, watery dal, or tili saru, something that is very, very watery, easy to digest, is mixed with rice and had. And drinks, or having to consume drinks that are predominant of madura and amla rasa. So how this can be incorporated is, they mention sweet fruits and juices are recommended in summer. So juices, fruits, or these sweet juices are not recommended 365 days in Ayurveda. So only in Grishma Ritu, acharyas recommend having sweet fruits or making a juice out of them, and storing in earthen pot is even slightly cold food when had in Grishma Ritu will not bother us. And Panchasaram is a drink that is mentioned in our text, that is a drink made with honey, dates, grapes, and sugar, and made into a drink and had. So all of them are sweet, replenishing, and help us to get rid of the exhaustion from the extremes heat that is there. So again, water cooled and flavored with camphor. So then again, to cool the body, back then there were no refrigerators or no storage systems, so which is why all these were mentioned. What is contraindicated? So food that is predominant of katu, that is extremely spicy food, salty food, and excessively sour food are not to be had in these seasons. So because it again increases the heat in the body and makes it even worse. Then alcohol is completely contraindicated in summers because it is extremely ushnam, and vyayamam and exposure to sun. So vyayamam then again in moderation has to be toned down. Does not mean that we stop ourselves from doing it, or avoid vyayamam in peak of the sun and do a mild exercise in summer. Then heavy food, that is dadi, curd, mamsam, meat, and excessive eating is contraindicated. So meat soup is given in summers, but dadi, so then again remember, dadi or curd is extremely ushnam, it is not cooling to the body. We will go through the properties of food in the next chapter. So acharyas have contraindicated or advised not to consume dadi in spring, because dadi is again ushnam and it vitiates kapham excessively. It is heavy to digest. So in Vasantham, that is spring, and in Grishma Ritu, dadi is completely contraindicated. So predominantly we have foods that are cooling, mostly in the form of fruits or juices, and even our diet should be predominantly liquidy or more watery in nature. Milk is also extremely beneficial to be had in these seasons, as milk is cooling in nature. Then coming to Varsha Ritu. So from the summer, we move to 2 months of rain. So what happens is, the weak digestive power of Grishma Ritu further gets deteriorated in the Varsha Ritu. So the cold wind and so what happens is, already there is a weak digestion, it further deteriorates in the rainy season. So already 2 months, the earth or the soil is extremely hot. So the cold wind and rain droplets fall on the hot earth or surface, which generate amla vipakam. That is, the nature of the vegetation, the animals, the soil, the water that we get is slightly amla vipakam. That is, it becomes slightly sour, because on hot land, after a period of 2 months, when the rain falls on it, it generates this kind of amla vipakam. So this water and weak digestion further vitiates all the doshas, causing vyadi. So if you notice, by nature, rainy season will be the season where most of us fall sick, or a lot of children fall sick. There are a lot of so-called flus, cold, cough, or there will be a tendency for us to frequently fall sick in rainy season, because one, the Agni Balam is extremely low. Two, the weather or the weak, the water, the soil, the whole weather surrounding us makes the physical balam also even low. So by nature, when your Agni is low in potency, there is an easy tendency for us to get any kind of disease. So in Varsha Ritu, we have to be very careful. What we can do is, Vata gets naturally aggravated, hence Vasti is recommended. Vasti is again a medicated Panchakarma procedure. So that has to be gone through, especially, but I wouldn't recommend only Vasti to be got done in Varsha Ritu. But in general, if people have a Vayu related complaint, then definitely it aggravates in Varsha Ritu, because there is a aggravation of Vayu abnormally in this. So any kind of pains and aches, if they tend to aggravate in this Ritu, people can go and undergo Vasti treatment. Clothes should be well fumigated. That is, they should be dry, not wet, and good clothes that are dried have to be worn. Footwear is recommended. Stay in upper mansions free from cold, mist, and moisture. So earlier back days, there was also a tendency for floods or water bearing So I think acharyas have mentioned always in Varsha season, one should move to staying in upper mansions or floors to prevent the flooding or entry of water or living in water. Then what has to be consumed? So the diet has to be kept very simple and minimum. Easy to digest food can be consumed. So old cereals, that is old rice, old wheat, those kind of food can be consumed. Soup of pulses if they are vegetarians. So preferably green gram or moong dal. Watery soup of this or soupy vegetable soup can be had because they're all laghu and easy to digest. Then meat of Jangala Desha. So again, all soups, people should add some amount of ghee because ghee is extremely good to stimulate the Agni. Then water boiled with panchakolam. So panchakolam is a medicine in Ayurveda actually. So it predominantly contains 5 drugs, that is pepper, ginger, and 3 other drugs, that is pipali moolam, that is piper nigra, and it is generally to keep the Agni good. So this panchakolam will contain 5 very carminative drugs, that is which increase the digestive fire or prevent the digestive fire from becoming weak. So they recommend boiling panchakolam, but it is as simple as even if you keep your water boiled with a little bit of ginger, pepper powder, pepper, etc., then again not too much. Water boiled with dhania, ginger, etc., will keep the digestive fire good. Then old wine or arishtams are also recommended in Varsha Ritu. Then again, they help to stimulate the Agni. Then on days of heavy rainfall, extreme rainfall, when there is absolutely no sunlight visible, then some amount of sour foods, sufficient fatty foods, that is good amount of ghee, etc., can be taken. Honey again is mentioned, and light food. But always the principle in Varsha Aharam should be easy, light to digest food. In extreme days of rainfall, when the atmosphere around us becomes very, very cold, then they recommend fatty foods or sour foods to be had. So in Varsha Ritu or rainy seasons, actually, people, acharyas mentioned some amount of curd, dadi, ghee, etc., can be had. So usually people follow the opposite. In summers or extreme heat season, they go on consuming curd. Once it becomes cold or in rainy seasons, they do not consume. So once we go through the Aharam chapter, we will understand the properties. So in extreme rainy seasons, people can have sufficient slightly heavy to digest food and sour foods to help keep the Agni stimulated. So this is what happens in Varsha Ritu. So 2 months of rain has passed. Then we enter into Sharath. That is nothing but autumn. So what happens in autumn season is, in the rainy season, the body gets accustomed to the cold weather. So 2 months of rain, it has become very chill outside. The pittam slowly that gets accumulated inside, because in Varsha we saw by nature the amla vipakam or sour nature slightly increases in all the vegetation, water, soil, etc. So in general, amlam or anything sour tends to increase pittam, but it fails to aggravate or vitiate due to the frigid atmosphere inside. Then when there is sudden sun rays and heat, the body becomes extremely hot. So the accumulated pittam suddenly in autumn, when there is sun rays, it becomes vitiated, thereby causing sudden aggravation of pittam in the body. So we'll have to remember that in spring, Kapha gets vitiated. In rainy season, there is an aggravation of Vayu. Once we enter autumn, there is an aggravation or vitiation of Pittam. So to pacify the aggravated Pittam, ghee prepared with tikta, that is bitter tastes, are given. So generally, as in practical clinic, we see that this Sharath Ritu or autumn is the season where people who have a lot of blood related or pittam related disorders have aggravation. So it can be excessive bleeding, bleeding in motion or nose bleeds, or urinary infection or heat or bleeding in the urinary tract, or any kind of skin disease that are related to pittam flare up for them. Herpes, all these are related to pittam. So extremely common in this season. Or it is a general feeling of extreme body heat in the body, can also be as simple as a disease that is seen in Sharath Ritu. That is because there is a natural aggravation of pitta in the body. So by all means, what you do is, when the physician treats you, always medicated ghees that are prepared out of bitter taste are given, because bitter, that is tikta rasam, is the most beneficial to bring down pittam. So then again, when we go through shadrasa chapter, you will understand this. So virechanam, that is the panchakarma where we make the person purge, and rakta mokshanam, that is bloodletting, is commonly done in this season. So any patient coming with complaints of pitta related disorders, like I just mentioned earlier, or even in general, if you're a healthy person, getting one round of virechanam done in Sharath Ritu prevents us from getting any pitta related disorders. Then wear light clothes, apply a paste of sandanam. Then again, all that to combat the pittam has to be done, or the heat of pittam. Then mukta or pearl chains should be worn. One should enjoy the moonlight in the evenings. So during these seasons, like I mentioned, pitta and blood related complaints aggravate. So it immediately has to be catered to and treated with virechanam, that is purging, and rakta mokshanam, which is bloodletting. So diet that is predominant of bitter, that is tikta rasam, sweet, and kashaya rasam have to be had. All these three tastes are the main tastes that help reduce pittam in the body. Then again, lagu aharam, or light, easy to digest food should be taken. So rice, green gram, amla, that is though amla is predominantly coming under sour taste, the amla is an only exception in the sour taste category that has a little bit of astringent taste to it, and amla is the only exception where it does not increase pittam. If you see all the other foods that are sour, like tamarind, tomato, citrus fruits, lemon, etc., they all are sour and have a tendency to increase pittam. But amla or gooseberry is the only exception to the rule, where it does not vitiate pittam because it has a sour and kashaya rasam, slightly astringent taste to it. Then snake guard, honey. Again, honey is kashaya rasam, like I told you, pure honey. It helps to keep the pittam under control, and meat of jungle animal. This is a very rough example that we give. It's not that those 2 months only these 5 or 6 foods should be consumed. Just the principle has to be understood, that again in autumn, that is in Sharath Ritu, there is a vitiation of pittam. So we cannot be having excess of spicy food, pickles, vinegars, or extremely sour foods, spicy food. Slightly tone it down to a more blander food, and include more of bitter and sweet tastes in the food. Then the contraindications mentioned are exposure to fog, sleeping during the daytime, then sunbath because of extreme heat. Anything that increases Ushna Gunam is not recommended. Exposure to the wind, because those kind of wind is actually quite heating to the body. Alkaline and heavy to digest food. Curd, sesame oil, and alcohol. So curd and sesame oil both are slightly guru. So, and as I told you, curd is heating to the nature. Already pittam is vitiated in Sharath Ritu, so we completely avoid consumption of dadi in these 2 seasons. And alcohol, then again, it vitiates pittam. So we have gone through the 6 seasons, and these are the modifications we have to make. So what is Ritu-sandi? The last 7 days of a season and the first 7 days of the next season is called Ritu-sandi. That is the transitional period. So once we move from one season to the other, the transition that we make in our food and regimen has to be gradual. So one should taper regimens of the previous Ritu and slowly adapt the regimens of the next season. So suddenly we shouldn't abandon, because for example, in winters, we will be used to taking heavy, sweet, nourishing food, etc. Suddenly, within a day, you're not supposed to abandon everything and change your diet. That is, gradually you will need to reduce what you're having and include what is recommended in the next season, and gradually withdraw this. So suddenly abandoning and adopting different regimens will definitely cause problem, because our Agni will not be able to adapt to the sudden change. So always the first 7 and the last 7 days of any season is a transition period, where gradually we have to follow the diet and regimens that are mentioned. So thank you. And I think last class people had asked me to mention about the Nasyam and the names of the drops. So for Nasyam, it is Anutailam. That is 2 to 3 drops in each nostril once a day. I have mentioned the procedure. Then Elanir Korbu, 1 drop in each eye for the eyes, either before sunrise or after sunset, not when there is a peak sun. And for body, either sesame oil or Dhanvantram Thailam can be used. And the oil that we apply on our body should always be slightly warmed. So do not use it as it is. Slightly warm the oil and apply it, because the absorption is better and it helps reduce the vayu. And always the oil should be heated with a double boiling method, not directly on the gas flame. So then again, this is only in a healthy condition. In case what is mentioned in this does not suit you or aggravates any condition, kindly consult before using, because these are the ones mentioned in Dinacharya, that is for a healthy individual. So if there is any aggravation or it's something doesn't suit you, immediately stop its use is what I would recommend. And I think someone had asked me Sanskrit books. So the Moola Granthas with commentaries you can buy. So Chaukamba publication has it. So you can have the Ashtanga Hridayam with Arunadatta commentary or Hemadri commentary. So either of them are available. So you can buy either of these. So I think we can go to the doubt session. I think we'll just do a quick recap for 1 minute, because we have a couple of minutes time. So we went through 6 seasons, that is early winter, then extreme winter, which is considered Hemantam and Shishira Ritu, where the Agni Balam is extremely good. So lot of heavy, good to digest food, lot of meat soup or topped with lot of ghee, sugarcane, milk and milk products are consumed. And one should keep warm, and good amount of exercise is recommended, and stay in warm closed spaces. As we move to spring, there is a vitiation of kapham that happens because of the sudden sun rays that comes. It liquefies the accumulated kapham. So both the Agni is weakened and there is an abnormal vitiation of kapham. So by all means, it has to be pacified. So if it is very common that we see respiratory disorders in these conditions, so Vamanam and Nasyam are medically mentioned. Then Vyayamam, powdered massage, all these are recommended to keep kapham under control. And day sleep is contraindicated in spring. And we have to move from a more heavy, nourishing kind of a diet to a slightly ruksham or easy to digest and slightly drying diet. Then that is yava, that is barley, millets, meat of jangala animals, roasted vegetables and meat can be consumed. Honey is recommended. Water boiled with shunti, that is ginger, and musta. Musta is nothing but another drug which is identified as Cyprus rotundus, but it is not commonly found in our household kitchen or other things. It is more of a medicinal purpose thing. That's why I didn't highlight it much. So water boiled with ginger or dhania is good enough at home. So musta is nothing but it has a good deepana pachanam, that is, it is very good digestive and carminative in nature. So it is not commonly found or recommended. Again, its identification would become a problem if it had to be used, but it is mentioned as shunti and mustam. We can go about having musta. Go about having shunti boiled with water. Then honey mixed with normal temperature water helps reduce kapham. Then Ayurvedic physicians or Vaidyas generally prescribe Asava Arishtas in this season. Some amount of alcohol is recommended in this season because of the extreme cold weather, and also to help cut down on the excess kapham. Basically fermented drinks, and avoid extremely sweet foods, extremely sour, heavy to digest food, and curd. Then we move to summer, where there is complete depletion of kapham and there is extreme heat, and there is a natural tendency of dryness and vayu to increase. So we have to keep ourselves cool, wear comfortable clothing. Some amount of day sleep is recommended in summers. Then at night, or basically sleep or keep ourselves cool. And predominantly switch your diet to a more watery or liquidy form of food, and include madura rasa, because maduram then again pacifies or reduces vayu. It is nourishing to the body. It combats the extreme dryness of summer. So sweet fruits, fruit juices, or drinks that are sweet, or tender coconut milk, tender coconut water, all these are recommended. And food that is predominantly liquid, mostly like a kanji form or a very watery kind of food is recommended. And water stored in cool earthen pots are recommended. Avoid extremely spicy, sour foods or salty foods, and heavy meat. Curd and alcohol is again contraindicated in summers. So one odd day we can take it. Predominantly, it should be avoided. Then you move to Varsha, where the dull, digestive, weak power of Grishma Ritu continues. So Varsha is the most common season where we fall sick, because both the Agni Balam and the water or the nature itself is very, very poor, that it easily causes vyadhi or problems to us. So we have to keep ourselves well covered, wear clean fumigated clothes, footwear is recommended, and avoid unnecessary exposure to the rain or the weather. Keep the diet easy and simple to digest, that is old cereal, soup of pulses, or preferably green gram and moong dal. Then meat of Jangala Desha, that is meat soup is mostly recommended, not meat, and all your food has to be had with ghee. Then water boiled with panchakolam. Then again, it is a medical, it is an Ayurvedic medicine. So you can either use that, or using simple pepper, ginger, jeera, all these are good carminatives at home. Boiling water with that and having helps to keep the Agni functioning well, because we have seen in Grishma and Varsha, Agni is very, very poor. Then when there are days of heavy rainfall, some heavy food can be had. Then from extreme rainy season, where the 2 months of chill weather, we move to autumn, where there is sudden heat. So the pitta that is accumulated in the 2 months of rainy season gets vitiated here. So autumn is also extremely hot. This October-November period, we see that there is sudden heat that we feel. So there is a natural vitiation of pittam. So medically, people undergo a lot of virechanam and rakta mokshanam, that is bloodletting and purging. Then also all the regimens that help reduce pittam have to be followed. And foods that are predominant of bitter taste, easy to digest food, sweet and kashaya rasa foods have to be had. And contraindications would be alcohol, curd, heavy to digest food, unnecessary exposure to the sunlight, etc. should be followed in autumn. So then after autumn, we will move again to Hemantam, that is the early winters. So gradually you have to make the transition to that. So this Ritu-sandi is the 14 days, last 7 days of one season and the first 7 days of the next season. So this transitional period has to be done gradually. So I think we can go to the doubt session. 1 second. Can I just go back? So I think what is Jangala Desha? I think we have covered it in the first class itself. Musta, I have mentioned, it is a Ayurvedic herb. It is botanically identified as Cyprus rotundus. So the picture of that was there. They are small, like tuber-like found, because the medically they are deepanam pacham. That is, they're very good for digestion and carminative, which is why they have mentioned it. But when you're using it at home or regularly, shunti or ginger is good enough. So double boiling method is keep a water bath and then place your cup of oil on it and heat it. That is double boiling. Do not keep the oil bowl directly on the gas. So we live in Chennai, which has summer throughout the year rarely. So that is what. So currently, because of all the environment changes, there is a lot of Ritu Viparya. So in summers, there is rain for 2 days. When in rainy season, some days for 10 days, 12 days together, there is no rain at all. So this happens because of the so-called effect of global warming or whatever we are going through today. There are a lot of changes in the Ritu. That particular season, we do not go through that particular weather condition. Sometimes we see in winter also, there'll be few days which is extremely hot. But we still say that we have to go by this calendar. Just because in summer there's 2 days of rain, that does not make it Varsha Ritu. So we cannot go through or start eating everything that recommended in Varsha Ritu. So we go by the calendar. Definitely in Agni Nakshatram, we see a high increase of heat in the body in May, June, July. I think now the heat has relatively increased, but the humidity may remain the same. Kindly follow the Ritucharya that mentions according to the months roughly. Definitely there'll be some change. So November, December, January is slightly cooler compared to June, July. So we'll have to take that into consideration in current living. So Chandanam paste is recommended earlier days because of too much of heat. To control that, earlier days there was no AC, coolers or fans or etc., which is why they had asked us to apply chandanam. So that can also be done even now. So any plain pure chandanam, if we get, mix it with water and applying chandanam over the body. So could we use air conditioned summer? So it's not because these days we touch almost 40-50 degrees. Some amount of AC is allowed in summers. I would say you can cool the room and switch it off after a couple of hours and stay in that temperature. So in summers, definitely you can use it to some extent, because we have gone out to so much heat that we cannot adapt. So could this activity could we use activity in summer season? So some amount of physical activity is recommended in summers. So what would you recommend? We do not see extreme winters. So we do not see extreme winters. Then again, do you follow the spring season food as the temperature is more? No. So then again, just because the season is that way, we should not adapt another charya. So definitely in November, December, January, there is some amount of chillness that is seen in Chennai. You may not see extreme winters. So assess your Agni Balam accordingly. You need not eat heavy food like lassi, paratha, go to that extent of eating heavy food, but slightly your appetite may pick up in that season. So if you have slightly good amount of food also would be okay. That is what is mentioned. So when you advise items like ghee, honey, so then again it is very relative. Ghee, honey, there's no specific quantity. So when you're having food, we ask you to take a spoon of honey, ghee with your food. Honey also, then again, mix maybe a teaspoon or a tablespoon of it with water and you can have it. So I will show the name of the book and slide again. So when the season is changed, but there is still Vayu, Pittam, Kapham increased, how to control it? Then that is an abnormal condition, which means there is definitely problem. You'll have to consult a physician. How do we adjust or balance between? So how do we adjust balance between nature of the body? So then I told you Prakriti will not get much impacted by this. So by Ritu Prabhava in general, we have this Kapham, Vayu and Pittam getting aggravated in respective seasons. So then again, I told you if you have a certain Prakriti, it will not cause a Vyadi to you. It is just that those characteristics are found more in you, so that there's nothing really to do that balances you. There's nothing needed to balance it. So Ritu Prabhava you can balance by doing whatever has been mentioned today. Again, this diet is same for everyone or change. So this diet will hold good for all people in a balanced way. So Prakriti may not necessarily change too much if we have a balanced diet like this. So what can we do for premature? So again, medically related questions. Is there any reference for? So no medically related questions I'll be answering. So you can use Dhanvantram Thailam. That I will do. So we have heavy winter with snowfall. What type of physical activity? So then again, I think when we covered Vyayamam, I had told you lot of kind of physical activities have come about now. So in in extreme winters, any good amount of physical activity your body can withstand. So running is good, skiing is good. 1 second. So heavy winters, I think good amount of physical activity can be. So running, skiing, all that is recommended. So any good physical activity, playing an intense sport, everything can be done. So you mentioned that Agni is highest during winter. We can eat sweet food. Isn't sweet food also cause? So then again, it is in moderation. So it's not that all your 3 meals you have to eat extremely sweet, nourishing food. That will definitely increase kapha meaning. So what I have mentioned is a moderation. So even rice is sweet, wheat is sweet, some amount of ghee is sweet, milk is sweet. It's not only sweets as we eat as a dessert that is sweet. So balancing in this way is important. So in cities like Chennai, again the weather is hot and humid. So yeah, so basically, like I've told you, go through the months as it is. The humidity, there is some difference in heat and humidity that we see throughout. So one of the recommendations for Sharath Ritu is to apply paste of Sandhanam when and where. So you can just apply after bath for some time, and once it dries, you can remove it from the body. Do not allow the chandanam to dry too much. So what do adana and visarga kala signify? So when we say discharge, so discharge of, that's what I said, discharge, that is the environment discharges or gives out human strength to the body. Then how long should we keep? So I'm not answering dinacharya questions today. I think I've already used a lot of spent a lot of time for that. So the seasons have moved back for earlier times. Uttarayana starts from December. So should we adapt these new? So the dates are very, very brief. You can just go by the mid months of what I have told you. Then again, I have told you, because of climate variations, pollution, global warming, all of this, we are facing a lot of difference in the ritus. Like I told you, sometimes there is rain in summer, sometimes for months together there is no rain in Varsha Ritu. Every year is different. So roughly what is mentioned in the calendar by these dates that I've told you can be adopted. So in today's time, we have seen as in the month of May we have rainfall. So that's what I told you. So that is a Ritu Viparyaya, that is actually not supposed to happen, but because of our doings it is happening. 2 or 3 days of rain in summer season will not cause that. So you can still continue to follow that particular season's charya. But Ritu, as per. So then again in Greece, so again everyone has asked the same thing. So in mid-May or June, when you have 3 or 4 days of rain, it will still be by physiology or by environment. The principle that is happening in Grishma Ritu only will be happening. So you wait until mid-July till you follow that particular Ritucharya. Ideally in June, July, it is not, May, June, it is not supposed to rain. It is winter. The intensity of the heat will be different in different areas. That's it. So as a teetotaler, generally is generally considered a healthy practice. How do we understand Ayurvedic? So earlier days, the way alcohol was made or the way fermented drinks were made is a lot different from what we get now. So mostly it was made with fruits or a lot of other rice, wheat, that kind of fermented drinks were made to combat the cold. So that's what the acharyas have given an alternative. People who are not used to consuming alcohol can consume just honey mixed with normal temperature water to reduce kapha in the body. So once again, this reference to mamsam food, it is recommended to take in Sanskrit. The other meaning of mamsam is fruit pulp. There's a lot of mamsam in Ramayanam where so here classically mamsarasam in Ayurveda has been mentioned as meat. It is not fruit pulp or anything. In winters, acharyas have mentioned that meat of Jangala Desha. So mamsam, that is Jangala mamsam, is mentioned. So that means that the meat of this thing is recommended. So when we go through Aharam chapter, we will know the properties. There were people in earlier days also, because of the activities or what they used to do, had meat in their diet. So people who are vegetarians can stick to the vegetarian diet, and people who are non-vegetarian can alter this accordingly. So then So Rakta Mokshanam is not blood donation. It is a form of bloodletting, like a purification, where blood is let out from the body either through leech therapy or puncturing the veins. So that is recommended only in specific conditions and done in Ayurvedic clinics. The type of bloodletting will be decided by the person. It is not the same as blood donation. So Vyayamam, then again, contraindicated means it is not fully, you should not sit idle in summers. Please do some amount of exercise in moderation, like a mild walking, a good brisk walk before there is too much of sunrise. That is what was recommended. So, yeah. Summers are rainy and humid. Other regions, summers are dry, followed by autumn and rains. Would it be good to understand? So then again, I said there are extreme conditions of countries where they go through. So summers are rainy and humid, and other regions. So by large, acharyas have dealt with the general principle that follows, where summers are dry and autumns are. There could be some amount of rains. We see during Diwali time there is some amount of rain, but following Varsha Ritu in autumn, definitely there is a pitta prakopam. So even in Sharath or peak autumn, if there are 2 or 3 days of rain, you should understand by principle that there is a pittam that is increased in the body. So we need to follow it according to that. In extreme climatic condition where there is change, so in summers are rainy and humid. So I don't know if in summers all the 2 months there's going to be continuous rain, but definitely if it converts into a calendar wise summer, kindly follow the Ritucharya of summer. So we will deal. So ma'am, dried sweet amla. So amla in any form can be taken. So we'll deal about curd, buttermilk, etc. In the next seasons. So in Chennai, rainy season is October, November, followed by winter. That's what I told you. Sometimes in November, actually, it is not supposed to rain. In rainy seasons, currently, there is very little rain. And when we reach this October, November, Diwali time, we usually observe rain, but it will still be Sharath Ritu. So you need not go back to following the Ritucharya of a rainy season. So, yeah, I think I've covered most of the questions. So, yeah, I kindly request each of you to ask about 1 or 2 questions only, so we can give equal chance to everybody. So, yeah. And so someone had asked for the names of the books. So videos will be uploaded later. You can go through them and listen to them again as well. So 1 second. Yeah. So I think have I unmuted? Yeah.
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah, tell me, ma'am.
I have got 2 questions. One is on this 2 or more meals. What does Ayurveda say about intermittent fasting that we hear a lot about? That's my first question. And the second is the pranayams that we do as part of yoga. In different weathers, again, is it supposed to be different? You should do more breathing exercises or less? Is there a suggestion there?
So the first question of aharam and food related, we will cover once we go to the food topic related to how we have to consume food. And as such in pranayamam, there is nothing mentioned on its intensity, because after yoga, pranayamam is mentioned. So it is nothing but a more relaxing kind of a thing that is done post yoga. So to my knowledge, there is no specification of certain seasons where you should do one kind of pranayamam or you shouldn't do another.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
So then 1 second. Yeah. Have I unmuted? 1 second.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell me, sir.
I said this, see, in the Hemantam Ritu and following the winter, that is, you get more appetite due to the fact that outside temperature is low, body temperature is 37. So this creates the Agni. That is, this temperature difference. In summer, you don't feel like that because outside temperature is almost body temperature. Whereas in winter, it is 22, 23, 25. Therefore, the Jatara Agni is very active. That is the explanation. I think you have to consume fatty food and you are able to digest them because the body burns it quickly to keep the temperature of the system.
Yeah,
That
correct.
body temperature is always 37. You like
Correct.
it or not. So
Yes.
the system will work in the auto mode. In summer, you don't feel hungry. You want to drink water. With water itself, you fill your stomach. Whereas in winter, it is not like that. So this temperature difference, the auto mechanism of the body is what is the cause for, I think, fatty food. Consider the need. You feel hungry and therefore you eat.
So it's not only the 37 degrees Celsius body temperature here. In Ayurveda, the Agni, the Ushnatvam in the body increases will affect the Agni. That is what Acharyas have mentioned. So there's no mention of any temperature per se, because since we are, our temperature does not vary according to season. Because of the cold, chill weather outside, naturally the dissipation of heat from the body is less, which in turn stimulates the Agni inside. That is the principle. There's nothing to do with body temperature. That is, you will not show 37 or 39 on this thing. Similarly, in summer.
No, what I'm saying is your body requires, the heat is dissipated from the body effectively because the temperature difference is significant. If that is the case, then from where that body to maintain the temperature, it will require food. Food is burnt to give the energy. That energy is again taken away by the environment. See, this is the thermodynamics of that.
Okay, so am I supposed to answer, or you are just giving me a...
No, I feel that answer is because the fatty food consumption, etc., you talked about, is due to this reason of heat dissipation from the body. If you don't, cover yourself and all that, so it takes place, and then you are able to digest those heavy foods. That is what
Could be.
Food is giving what is giving the energy then. That energy is required to maintain the temperature of the body, and that is taken away by the environment.
Okay. You can understand it that way, but what is principally mentioned in the text is what I have covered. Because your Agni is extremely good in winters, whatever you take is getting capable of digested in those seasons, which is not the same in other seasons.
Yes.
That is what is the principle. Yeah.
Yes. Right.
Okay, sir. So I think let's go about quickly. Hello, have I unmuted someone?
Hello.
Yeah, tell me, ma'am.
Yeah, I want to know what is Anutailam and Yalanir Kurambu.
I have mentioned it in the previous class itself, ma'am. If you have attended Dinacharya chapter in detail, I think we have spent a lot of time discussing Anutailam and what Yalanir Kurambu is. So you can go through the recording of that and get an understanding.
Second class, is it?
Second class, yeah. Dinacharya.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. What is 5 items drink you have mentioned? So I didn't understand this question. Someone has asked, what is 5 items drink you mentioned? So I think if there's any other thing you can ask, or else we can wind up the session. So Panchakolam, then again, I said, is a medicine which is made of 5 herbs that are extremely good and carminative and good for digestion. So you can, instead of that, you can use your plain jeera, pepper, shunti, or ginger that is mentioned, because Panchakolam contains 2 of those 5 items. Or Panchakolam is even available in Ayurvedic shops. So you can use that as well. So then again, it will differ. So why we feel hungry in summer season? No, hunger will be there in all seasons. Just the intensity of hunger varies according to the principle of weather that is mentioned. It's not that we will never feel hungry in summer. So sometimes there may be good appetite in summer, but predominantly food that is less spicy, less sour, less salty has to be consumed, and good madhura rasa aharam can be consumed. Yeah. So if there's any other question that we have missed, then I think you can just send us by mail so that we can cover those questions accordingly. Yeah. So I think we can wind up today's session. So you can just send your mails to this ID. So Sanskrit from home at Vyoma Lab. Yeah, you can just mention it to this mail ID, which is available, and it will be forwarded. Yeah. So I think we can end the session. It's already 9:30, and we shall cover some other topics in the next class. And you can always send your doubts through mail. Thank you, one and all. So let's meet next Sunday.